And we're live for another episode of the Hormone Optimization Masterclass at Rebel Health. I am your host, Michael, and I am here today for the presentation on men's hormones and health. So for all the guys out there who have been waiting for your turn, I have Dr. Jerry Bailey here today. Dr. Jerry, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and help the guys themselves, and then also help the women understand the guys.
Yeah, is this normal for you? Do a lot of hormone related education. Are you always the only guy educator in the room when these things happen? Are guys always kind of getting the short end of the stick?
Yeah, often, kind of the short end of the stick there. It's women's is a little more complicated, but we get more and more guys. Like after this, I got a talk this evening. After this talk, we got about 125 signed up, and about a quarter of them are guys, and so
okay.
The rest are there. So yeah, it's
we're catching up.
Yeah, they're catching up. They're catching on, and wanting to make sure they're just as healthy, if not healthier, than the women too.
All right, and we're gonna learn about all things men's hormones. First, I'm going to introduce you a little bit for anybody who's not familiar with your work. Dr. Jerry Bailey is a certified nutritionist, acupuncturist, chiropractic, and functional medicine physician at Lakeside Holistic Health with over 2 decades in the field. He's also a prominent expert on men's medicine and leads the world in the emerging science of polyhormonal adrenal testosterone syndrome, which we're probably going to learn about. He has been in practice for over 2 decades, seeing tens of thousands of patients in that period, and his clinical experience and acute awareness of current research as a former faculty at the University of Western States in the Graduate Studies Department in the Masters of Science Health. I have friends who went to that program. Masters of Science of Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine affords him a unique ability to apply current research to clinical practice, be a truly evidence-informed practicing physician, and he also has 2 sons. He's a triathlete, a drummer, a gig your day job supports. I like that. And has been featured in Bloom, Parade, HGTV, Very Well Health, Spy, Medium, NBC News, a bunch of other media outlets. So we're very lucky to have you here to educate our audience on all things men's hormones, and maybe we'll get you to play the drums.
Maybe. Maybe I'll pull out my guitar and play the 2 chords that I know.
All right, deal. We've had a ukulele. Dr. Mark Ryan, who's a acupuncturist, Chinese medicine, thyroid specialist, pulled out a ukulele on a podcast once. It was pretty awesome.
Nice.
So, all right, let's get into it. Let's dive into men's hormones.
Okay. We're going to talk a little bit here about, a little bit about men's health today. And particularly, we're going to talk a little bit about the fat syndrome that Mike had said, the polyhormonal adrenal testosterone deficiency syndrome. But what we're really seeing in men is men's hormones are starting to mimic women's hormones. And we're going to talk about that hormonal disruption in men, a new clinical manifestation there. So our connection today, we're going to do some key concepts. We're going to cover kind of the background of hormones for men, testing to look for and what to do. Fat syndrome itself, we're going to cover that really briefly. We're going to talk about nutrition, supplements, and sleep, 3 key components to help build hormone health in men. How to boost testosterone right now, some simple things you can do on your own through there. And then we're going to go through some epigenetics, looking at some specific hormones, and then the epigenetics, the genetics for those, production, and how those get turned on, turned off during that process there. So we're going to have a little fun today through there. So when we look at somebody and we think about men or women in particular also, as we're looking at the hormones, we're looking at the epigenetics or the presentation of what's going on in their body, and then the genetics itself. And we can see how the external environment can influence the internal environment, and the internal can influence the external environment. And it's all intertwined. It's always looking there. Genetics have pre-programmed things they want to do, and then the environment will trigger those things. That'll trigger the hormone, and then that'll trigger the presentation or the epigenetics of the person's health through there. I always like to say, and add this in here, is, what we know about genetics is genetics always load the weapon, and the environment itself pulls the trigger. So you could have the most amazing genetics possible for testosterone production, low estrogen, low progesterone, really good overall health, but your environment stinks. What you're exposed to, what you're putting in your body, all those things really will trigger a worsening of things. And I see that, when we look at MTHFR genetics, I've seen clients with dual copies of both markers, no problem at all in their presentation or in their labs. I've seen clients with a single copy of one of them, and they have horrible methylation process and have all these symptoms. So that genetic aspect is really important to know, but it's also to know what they're surrounding themselves with and what they're doing to their health that really contribute and cause the problems in their world. When we're looking at changes in men's health overall, it's about $350 billion a year that hormone changes causes issues in health and in cost of living, cost of care, cost of all those things associated with society. So increasing number of men are suffering from low testosterone. Back in 2007, it was about 5.6% of men were known to suffer from low testosterone. Now, as of 2019, and we know this is even more, we haven't seen the figures yet, at least 25% of men are suffering from low testosterone. Clinical practice, I will say my number's higher because I tend to see those guys. So I would say probably close to 50 to 60% of men are actually suffering from low testosterone levels and other concomitant health conditions that are causing those issues. 40% of men age 40 and 70% of men age 70 have erectile dysfunction. And again, those numbers are even climbing in those men's age 40 and lower. 60% of men are over 60 are diagnosed with prostate cancer. When you talk to your urologist about prostate cancer itself and those that know as a guy, you're probably going to have prostate cancer when you die. Is that going to be the thing that kills you? Most likely not. If it gets caught early on and you have prostate cancer early on in your life, those are more aggressive, but later on in life, you're probably just going to die with prostate cancer and not even know it or even worry about it at that point. 20+% of men are suffering from depression, anxiety, or mental decline. 50 to 6% of the male population is obese. We're actually seeing now in some of the research, 70% of the U.S. population itself, looking at the United States alone, is considered overweight or obese. So we're seeing this more and more and more occur, that this is an underlying issue for multiple health conditions, not just low testosterone and those issues with men. There's a 10+% each year growing of each year from diabetes itself. So we're seeing more and more and more diabetes issues, pre-diabetes in men. And leading cause of death in men is heart disease. And we know that. And that's what we see happen. And that's environment. That's what we're doing to ourselves. And that's causing hormonal issues in guys too. Endocrine disrupting chemicals are increasing every single year. We're going to cover those a little bit here today on this one. And, it's probably, this is what we're seeing is that's changing the genetic outcome of people. You're changing the receptors on the body. You're changing how the genetics are working, and those are causing problems in the hormones itself. And I know there's going to be a great talk here within the seminar, within this also, that from another speaker that is going to go over a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals. We're going to kind of touch on ones that affect men itself. And then testosterone levels. This was big. This was back in 2008 or 9, I think this study came out, that the testosterone levels in men at that time were 59% less than what they were in the 1970s. So within a 40-year gap, we've seen testosterone levels drop nearly 60% from those of the 1970s. So our levels as guys, and we see this in the younger population and older population, are significantly lower than what they were. And we need to get that corrected, because otherwise we're heading down a path where, for a long time, like infertility was always kind of like, oh, that's a lady's problem. That's a lady's problem. The guys, we're good. Like we got our testosterone and we got our sperm, our sperm in there. We're strong. Not the case. 50% of the cases of infertility is men, and it's climbing within there because of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, because of changes in the environment around us, the environment that we do to ourselves. We're seeing these changes occur. So I want to emphasize that nearly 60% change from testosterone levels from the 1970s to now. So in my lifetime, we've seen this change that dramatically through there. So symptoms in men, they're often disregarded until it actually impacts the quality of life. Until then, that when more aggressively treatment is sought out. So as we look at that, we say, why is that? Well, as guys, we don't talk. We don't typically talk to the doctor. We don't go to the doctor until it's too late. It's usually our wife that drags us in. And that's what I see clinically a lot, is the wife is dragging the guy in like, hey, our sex life is down. You're grumpy. You're having trouble at work, kind of right through there, low libido, trouble at work, your belly fat gain, low energy. They're depressed, their concentration issues, forgetfulness that's occurring, erectile dysfunction also within there. They're tired after a meal. So these things we see in men consistently that are symptoms that we just kind of go, well, the docs will go, that's part of the aging process. It's not. We shouldn't age like that. If we look a couple generations back, Our grandparents, great-grandparents, they lived a vibrant life till their 80s or 90s typically with really no issues whatsoever. We're not seeing that anymore because of these changes in the environment and changes things that are happening in hormone health. So really key things that we ask our clients, and you can look and talk to yourselves or ask clients that you may be seeing there too, is do you have a decreased libido or sex drive? Do you have a lack of energy? Do you have decrease in strength and endurance? Have you lost height? Have you noticed a decrease in enjoyment in life? Do you feel grumpy and or sad? Are your erections less strong? Have you noticed a decrease in the ability to play sports? Do you fall asleep after dinner or other meals? Has there been a recent deterioration in performance at work? So these are really key questions, and they're often from the ADAM questionnaire. You can pull that up online, take the quiz yourself, and see that if you have more than 3 of these, you have issues going on that potentially are hormone related, and you need to get that figured out and get tested how to optimize your hormones better. But most guys, if they're not doing appropriate things, they're eating poorly, they're drinking a lot, they're not really getting any exercise, they're just kind of sitting around. These things, they're usually positive for all these. So this really affects our lives in our relationships with our wives, in our relationship with our girlfriends, with our partners. These things occur, and we need to bounce those and figure those out, and then go deeper into figuring out why those things are occurring. So I have this little rule that I use. It's the IPP rule. It's kind of funny if we think about it because it's men's health. It's the IPP rule. So it's a 3x3. So they can have three. These are the effects of hormone changes. So they have 3 effects of intimacy. They have erectile dysfunction. They have decreased thoughts of intimacy and decreased morning erections. If you aren't sleeping, you aren't recovering. If you aren't sleeping, hormone testosterone levels go down, morning erections go down also. 3 symptoms of physical issues: inability to engage in heavy lifting or sport. We have to lift heavy things in order to build muscle mass. And if you're not lifting heavy things and getting strength movement like that, that's going to decrease testosterone levels also. Can you walk more than 1 kilometer? A lot of guys can't. If we put them out there, or a mile, they can't do it. They're too tired. They're too fatigued. Can they kneel or bend or stoop? Can they actually bend down and get back up again? A lot can't. And the 3 symptoms of psychological there is loss of energy, sadness, or fatigue. Those are the 3 sets of 3 that we look at and really go, these are the things we see in guys consistently and that guys have problems with. So the simple guy, looking at hormones itself. So when we're looking at somebody, we're looking at very specific things of going on. We're looking in the brain. We're looking at the pituitary gland itself. We're looking at the organ we're trying to affect. And here we're looking at testes for guys. And we're looking for those feedback mechanisms. So the brain itself is going to recognize testosterone in the system. And then it's going to release gonadotropin releasing hormone to the anterior pituitary gland. And then that's going to kick out either FSH or LH. So luteinizing hormone, which is going to go to the Leydig cells, which is going to produce our testosterone. And then the follicle stimulating hormone, which is going to go to the Sertoli cells, which causes spermatogenesis. And so easy way to remember that is FSH goes to sperm, LH goes to testosterone. Just remember the S goes to sperm there. So as we get that feedback coming, so as testosterone increases and goes to the levels it should be, it tells the hypothalamus to shut things off. It tells the anterior pituitary to shut things off. Inhibin also gets released from the spermatogenesis from the Sertoli cells, which then tells it to calm down also. So it gets this feedback loop. As it goes down, levels go, then it tells it to go up. So it just creates this good feedback of either increasing or sustaining, increase or sustaining through there. And, men, we lose from age 20 onward, we lose about 6 million Leydig cells a year. So we lose those cells in the testes, and that's decreasing our testosterone levels from there alone, just looking at those, let alone all the other things that can cause this. But this is really why men's hormones are considered simpler than women's, because often we're just thinking about testosterone levels. What we also will look at, as we'll look at here shortly, is looking at estrogen, looking at progesterone also, because those are very important to know, because the estrogen, as that potentially increases, that can increase risks for prostate cancer, more so than testosterone. So trends in men's hormone health. And again, this is from that 2007 study, is we see those decreases in testosterone and DHEA, the precursors, progesterone and pregnenolone. We see those decrease. We see a concomitant increase of sex hormone binding globulin. What that does is, I always say, that acts like Pac-Man. As the free hormone's floating around, that little binding globulin comes up and grabs that free hormone, and it can't be used. So you could have what looks like pretty good levels of testosterone, free testosterone in the system, but that sex hormone binding globulin is grabbing it and making so it's not usable. So that one we have to look at there too. We look at the PSA, so a prostate-specific antigen. So that should be encapsulated within the prostate itself. It shouldn't get out. But if that prostate for some reason becomes leaky, like if we get leaky gut, and I'll talk about a little bit later, we get leaky gut, that can cause leaky prostate and leaky testes also. And then we get PSA elevation because that is being exposed to other tissues and other blood that causes that prostate-specific antigen to grow. Same thing with testes. We can get autoimmune reaction in the testes itself too to testosterone and spermatogenesis there from that leaky gut. We'll look at the volume of the prostate. We'll look at estradiol. We'll look at that luteinizing hormone, follicle-stimulating hormone, and prolactin. Those will all increase because they're getting that feedback of lower levels of testosterone and these precursors. And it's saying like, kick this up. And it's kicking out higher amounts of the LH, FSH, but the testes aren't doing anything. So we're always looking at where in there that process is going for somebody to have issues. 2 tests I like to use in practice or even jokingly when I talk to people is we look at the look down test. And this is a good example of it. If a guy looks down and he can't see his private parts, we know there's going to be testosterone issues because that increased abdominal mass there, that increased adipose tissue in the abdomen, outside the abdomen for that belly hanging there, you're going to have testosterone issues and penile shrinkage too. As more fat accumulates, that penis actually shrinks because it's getting covered by fat through there. The also one is every woman loves this one, the gray sweatpants test. I always laugh about this one here is, if you're wearing gray sweatpants, you can kind of see a guy's stuff, his junk down there. And if you're not seeing it because of belly fat or other things, that's another indication that there's hormone imbalance going on and there's issues going on with the gentleman's health through there. If we're looking at hormone pathways, this is what we're looking at, is we're looking at all of our reproductive hormones, our testosterones, our estrogens, our progesterones, come from cholesterol. Even our cortisol and our corticosterone and our aldosterones, our stress response come from cholesterol itself. So if we see levels of testosterone starting to decrease, or your reproductive starting to decrease, we see the cortisol start to decrease, we'll see cholesterol go up. So why do we see cholesterol go up then? Because the body uses that cholesterol to make the hormones. If it's not making the hormones, the cholesterol is going to stay in the system and start to elevate. Then your cardiologist, your primary care will come in and run lab work and go, oh, you have this elevated cholesterol here, but don't bother running your hormones. And, oh, we need to put you on a cholesterol blocker, put you on a statin medication there. Well, if you start messing with that cholesterol level, now you take the ability of the body even more so to create even your hormones even more. So then you start shutting down hormone production. So taking a very small picture of, which is what happens, and going, oh, we're just looking at cholesterol as an issue, not down chain or up chain of what occurring, is that's going to lead to even more hormonal disruption. And we see that guys and gals coming in that are on statin medications, their hormones are worse than what they were before that because they don't have the precursor for building that. So when we're looking at somebody and you want to look at really their full picture, is you don't just run the hormones, you run a full cholesterol panel. We'll run like a Boston Heart Lab to look at how you're breaking those down. Pro or anti-inflammatory cholesterols, your small particles, ApoB, ApoA, those type of things, your LP little a in there, and seeing what you're breaking it down if the cholesterol is a risk. Often it may not be a risk whatsoever, so high cholesterol isn't an issue. It's because of the hormones that you have the high cholesterol. So if we get that conversion going, cholesterol drops down. So looking at somebody and really getting a really good picture of their overall health by running really bigger panels of their blood work, along with additional testing, we're going to see how that person's physiology works, and we can take it and throw it on the board and go, okay, here's where the disruption's occurring, and here's how we're going to correct things. But I like to emphasize that is just looking at cholesterol as a marker for health or cardiovascular health is really a poor way to do medicine in general, because you negate the effects of what you're doing down chain or up chain from there for that. So you always want to take a bigger picture and look at what's occurring in somebody and seeing what their hormone production is and seeing potentially why that cholesterol is elevated through there. When we're looking at testing again even further, total and free testosterone, those are the two we're going to run for sure. We like a total, and these are based on labs right now running through, particularly LabCorp is what we use here in the States. We look at this, we want total to be anywhere from 650 to 850 nanograms per deciliter. We want your free around 17 to 22. often what we'll see is and this has happened in what I'm seeing daily coming in for men, is we'll see testosterone anywhere from 3 to 550. So it's low, but within the ranges, that's an optimal range I gave you. The ranges right now are like 250 to about 900. So, and they keep adjusting them from there. But we'll see guys in that 300 to 500 range, and that doctor's like, well, you're still within range, you're fine. But they have all the symptoms. So then we'll run a free testosterone, and you can see 17 to 22 is optimal right there. That's anywhere from usually 6 to 22. And so we'll see that lower level anywhere from 8 to 4. Lowest one I've seen is 2. And so we'll see it on the lower end again. The guys just feel junky, and they're like, well, you're not a candidate for testosterone because your total is in range there. Taking that Atom test and looking at those testing questions there, if they have 3 or more positive, they're a candidate for testosterone therapy. Some of the stuff we do here at our clinic is we use some more natural herbal stuff to help build that testosterone while we're working on the lifestyle things. And I've seen testosterone actually go up to this good optimal range, and then free actually stay where it is. So it's just not converting there. So then we have to figure out why that is. And sometimes we just have to give testosterone for guys, and that's okay. But we want to be able to give the smallest dose possible. We want it to not have negative side effects, but to really get them feeling better through there. So optimally 650 to 800, 17 to 22. The LH and FSH, those markers right there. These are again optimal points there, 6.5 and 9.5. Sex hormone binding globulin, that's one, if that is elevated above 30, they're probably having some issues with that causing hormone grabbing. And it's usually higher cholesterol issues and some liver issues that are causing that for them. Estradiol, we want below 20. There's some out there that say as long as it's below 70, particularly with testosterone hormone replacement therapy, you're okay. I like to keep that a little bit lower. We do need a little bit of it, guys, because it's neuroprotective for our brain. We don't want super low, but we don't want it super high too, because then we can get some of the feminization that occurs, the breast tissue growth, more moodiness, more fat accumulation around the abdomen that can occur from the estrogen there. So that's one we watch in guys too. The DHEA sulfate, that's that precursor to testosterone there. Again, we want that roughly around 300 micrograms per milliliter, and progesterone roughly around 100 or less also. So those are kind of the basic ones we look at for testosterone and hormones in guys itself. We'll also run thyroid. I know there's going to be some great talk on thyroid. That is we'll see. I see more and more men having Hashimoto's, autoimmune thyroiditis in men. I'll see that more often in guys too. And then we look again, cholesterols, glucose, the pro-inflammatory markers that can be in the system. We want to do a more comprehensive panel, but specifically for hormones, that's what we look at right there. Deeper dive into there, we're going to look at the Dutch test. I know there's something going to be talking about the Dutch test. We're going to look at organic acids also to look at function of the body. The gut zoomer is one I use, or any of the gut tests are great to run, because if you see a PSA elevation that suddenly happened in guys, if they have DRE, a digital rectal exam, the prostate really isn't that big, run a gut zoomer on them or a gut test on them, because you're going to see probably some dysbiosis of some sort in the AGI tract that's causing those issues in the prostate itself. And I see that time after time again. As I'm talking to a guy, if they come in, they've already had a PSA done, elevated on them, the doc wants them to go through the whole thing, biopsy and everything else. I say, whoa, let's slow down. What else are you experiencing? Then we'll go deep dive into looking at that gut zoomer to look at the dysbiosis through there. We'll run an organic acids test to see how the body's functioning, looking at mitochondria function, looking at nervous system function and neurotransmitters in there. Look at how the body's detoxifying. Really important to know. If you're not clearing pathways, you're going to have backup in the system, particularly estrogen, that's going to cause problems for guys. And then looking at the Dutch test, looking at how you're metabolizing those hormones. That is a great test, an amazing test to run to really look at how you're breaking things down and how you're moving things in or out of the system. We'll look at this here in a little bit too, looking at the 2-4-16 ratios. We want higher 2, really low 4, and relatively low 16s, because though 4s and 16s are inflammatory to the system, can potentially be cancer promotion there. That's the same thing for guys. We want a higher 2-hydroxyestrone in there, because those 4s and 16s are pro-inflammatory to the prostate, causing prostate issues through there. So we'll get that from the Dutch test too, looking at there. And then epigenetics. I'm going to cover some epigenetics here in a little bit also, to look at what genetic markers or SNPs are associated with production of estrogens, testosterones, progesterones in the system there. So this is our base stuff that we do every day with clients in here. Now we'll pick and choose if we're going to run organic acid gut zoomer in there with them, depending on symptomology that they're having. If they're having a lot of gut symptoms, digestive symptoms, I'll run the gut zoomer. If they're not and having just a few, I'll run the organic acids because it'll give us a small snippet of picture of digestion and dysbiosis there that I can generally take from doing this for 20 years and doing thousands upon thousands of these tests, that I can go, clinical experience tells me we need to treat this and what's going on there itself versus going deep dive. But if they have a lot of symptoms, digestive wise, and a lot of other symptoms globally going on, we'll go run a gut zoomer because we want to know what the heck is going on and how dysbiotic that GI system is, what infections are there, and how leaky or permeable it may be. But those are great tests. This is our standards for stuff for people, for guys and gals to go, what's going on with you and how do we figure it out? And then fat syndrome itself. So fat syndrome, this is something I've discovered over the years and kind of coined in my practice here, is that polyhormonal adrenal testosterone syndrome. So often it's like, oh, it's your andropause, or you just have low testosterone, or you have cholesterol issues, or you have insulin resistance, or, it's all these things. It's really a syndrome in and of itself, and it takes everything into account. You're going to see cellular resistance. You're going to see insulin resistance and glucose resistance. You're going to see a maladaptive stress response from the Dutch test. You're going to see that cortisol curve and those metabolites just be way off. You're going to see hormone dysfunction. Low testosterone, higher estrogen, higher progesterone in them potentially. You're going to see increased body fat, not just all over the place or around the abdomen, but actually in the muscle. And you're going to see increased fat within the liver itself, causing fatty liver, which is going to cause hormone problems too. You're going to see cardiovascular disease develop. You're going to see neurodysfunction occurring also. You're going to see sarcopenia or muscle wasting occur because as that fat gets into that muscle tissue starts to shrink. The body's going to try to preserve fat as long as it can and burn the muscle mass off. So as that occurs, then that fat muscle mass starts to go down, the fat goes up, metabolism starts slowing, even more so. And so we have to reverse that by lifting heavy things and build that lean mass up so that fat mass can start to come off. And then we see that membrane permeability, like we talked about there, from leaky gut to leaky testes to leaky prostate in men. For women, we'll see leaky gut and leaky ovaries causing very similar hormone disruption there to itself. So this is what I see in guys all the time. And 90% of the guys that come into the clinic, this is exactly what they have going on. It's a bunch of stuff that's all combined into one syndrome versus like, oh, you have cardiovascular, you have this. It's all together, and we see stages of this going on. So you can call it fat syndrome. And again, there's physical aspects to it, there's a mental aspect to it, and there's a chemical aspect to it. So rolling in here, we're going to look at dissecting some differences and knowing what and when to do specific things. We talked about the lab testing. We talked about fat syndrome. We kind of talked about how we look at the body through the hormones and through the production there of what's going on. Here we'll look at nutrition and the supplements very specifically of some things you can do to really start working on yourself. So nutrition, these are no-brainers. We are what we eat. That's what it comes down to. You eat crappy food, you're going to have crappy function in body. We know that. There's so many endocrine disrupting chemicals in the foods. Foods are high fat, high saturated fat, pro-inflammatory fat, high carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate, low protein within there, and low fiber. The standard diet that's out there is going to cause these issues. We're going to see this across the board. So we really look at, when working with somebody, or as you're looking, you want to look at what carbs you're getting, what protein you're getting, and what healthy fats you're getting too. And looking at the macros. We love macros. We work with our clients and we highly recommend, as we work you through a process, is looking at the macros themselves to know what you're eating and tracking that. Because otherwise we don't know. Used to be 30 years ago when I started doing this, we didn't have the technology. We had a computer program. You had to type in the food and measure everything and do all that. And it was just really cumbersome and it didn't work really well. Now with the tracking apps that are available, you can scan a barcode, you can weigh it and put it in the cyst. It's really simple to do the macro counting. And we really want to look at what your carbs, fat, and protein intake and how you're breaking down those fats, or what your fat breakdown is. As we build from there, we're always trying to get at least a gram of protein per pound or kilogram of body weight, or for poundage, usually about 2 for kilograms there, for you international people and US people, because we like to keep things different there. So a gram per pound of ideal body weight and 2 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. So myself, 210 pounds, getting about a gram of protein per that, I need to get anywhere from 180 to 210 grams of protein a day, because that's my ideal based on my body. Now, if I was 210 pounds and, not a lot of muscle mass and low fat mass or high fat mass, I may be aiming for 160 to 180 a day. So that way I can build up that lean mass through there. But because of how I work out and things I do, I need a higher protein content through there. So really looking at your ideal weight, that you want to get at least that gram per pound or 2 grams per kilogram. So 100 kilograms, say I was 220, just because the math is easy then, that's 100 kilograms. That's 200 grams of protein there for that 100 kilograms. So that works pretty good as an estimate for people. And then you could adjust up and down. Your carb intake itself is going to vary. Are you super active? Are you doing a lot of aerobic work plus weight training and things like that? Then you're going to look at bumping up your carbs. If you're not, then you want to keep your carbs lower, 120 to 150 grams a day. If you're doing a lot of aerobic activity plus the weight training, then you can get 200, 300, even 400 grams a day. I have some athletes that I work with that do CrossFit along with endurance training. They run marathons and they're very fit athletes, very muscular athletes. We have to keep their carbs super high because they're burning so much, and their protein also up too, and their fat too. So it varies. Women with fat, you really don't want to go below 75 grams a day. What we've seen clinically is when you go below 75 grams of fat a day, it starts messing with the hormones immensely. So that seems to be an ideal base for women. We can go up and down from there, but we usually don't go too below that because then we start seeing hormone production go off. Guys, 75 to 100 is usually pretty good, but again, we're looking at how they're metabolizing, what they need, and what they're doing with their system. So macros are really important with nutrition to start with till we can get you to a comfortable stage, and then you can balance out from there. Because once you get used to it after like a month or so of hitting particular ones that's working to feed your body, then you can really go, okay, here is my ideal, and then you get to know what you should be eating. We're all creatures of habit. I eat the same thing every single day, just about, with some variation here or there. But when I get too varied away from that, that's when I notice things happening and I have to get back to tracking again. So once you get it down, it's pretty darn easy for you to follow through there. So some foods to boost and metabolize your hormones. Really, you want to eat a high rainbow-based diet. Lots of colors there. I always say eat the rainbow, not Skittles. So eat tons of colors there. And that's going to be your high polyphenols. So a lot of good nutrients within there. And all these chemicals we don't even know the names of yet that they're discovering all the time. You want to make sure, if you can, so people can do this, the high cruciferous vegetables, that's going to increase your natural DIM and your IC3 in there also. Green tea every single day. Green tea. I love green tea. You're going to get your EGCG from there. That's going to help testosterone production also. Turmeric and black pepper combination, or the turmeric extracts work really well to decrease inflammation and potentially increase testosterone levels. If you're going to drink red wine, organic low sugar red wine. This actually can prove to be beneficial for testosterone production, but again, moderation is key. Ginger. Eating ginger every day for 3 months has shown to be a 17.7% boost in testosterone levels. Just adding ginger to your food. Oysters itself. Again, zinc boost from the oysters. Pomegranates, you get a 24% boost from. Wild caught fish actually will increase semen levels and testosterone levels because of the really good omega fatty acids within there. And then your extra virgin olive oil, really, really good there. That actually increases your luteinizing hormone. So that's going to increase your testosterone. It's also going to change, and we see this all the time. It's one of the things, if a person has cholesterol issues, we put them on 2 tablespoons of Evo every single day. And just that alone, you'll see their cholesterol numbers change dramatically. Their HDL goes up, their LDLs go on, total cholesterol goes down just by changing that. And you'll see inflammatory markers decrease also. So those are really good base things that you can do every single day that don't really mess up your system too much, that are simple to do and don't cost extra. Supplements. Now, this can get pricey, and this can get really, what do you need? You don't need to add a lot in often, but these are specific things you can try or in combination if you need them. DIM itself for guys. The DIM is a great product to block estrogen conversion, but with guys, you don't want to go over 100 milligrams a day. If you go over that, it actually shows to have a reverse effect. It actually increases estrogen levels. So DIM, if you're converting to estrogen, or what you'll see on a Dutch test in particular, or if you're seeing a higher estrogen, low testosterone there, you might need this as a product. This will work in there and show how it blocks the estrogen to keep it in the testosterone field. The 7-keto DHEA, that one in particular does show testosterone increase versus other forms of DHEA. Holy basil will also do the same thing. D3 up to 10,000 IU a day is really beneficial to increase testosterone levels too. Tongkat Ali is a really good herb that seems to help with boosting testosterone levels. Your omega-3 fatty acids, like we talked about, getting that in fish is ideal. About 4 to 6 grams of EPA DHEA, that combination will increase testosterone levels. Chrysin, again, is an estrogen blocker, so that will work with DIM. A really good multi will feed your system also. Your adaptogens to calm the cortisol response. When I work with clients, I always show that hormone chart there that we showed earlier. And one side is reproduction, rest, digest, reproduce. The other side is stress response. If you remember the old stereos with the decibel meter, we should be pinned over in that rest, digest, and reproduce. We get a stressor, we bounce back. Long-term stress, we start seeing that stressor, that meter start pinning over on the stressor part of it. So the adaptogens will help us body adapt better so we can kind of get it back over there. But again, Dutch test is going to tell us how you're metabolizing stuff so we know where you're at and if you need those or not. Some of the stuff you might not need at all, so you don't need to spend money on it. That's why you test and don't guess. Makes life easier. Glutathione, great adaptogen, great system to help your body detoxify. There's peptides. If we went over peptides, we'd have at least a 2 to 3 hour class on that. But your select estrogen receptor modulators, your androgen receptor modulators, your PPARs, all those in there. I'm going to cover a couple here in a minute. Those ones work really good to help the body overall balance hormone levels and get production up there. And then Shilajit, the new one out there that's been out for a couple of years now, that one seems to be pretty darn good at boosting testosterone a little bit. But again, just taking this stuff and not doing the work to balance your environment and balance your health, you're not doing anything. They're not going to work for you. And that's when clients come in, they've like, I tried all this stuff, it hasn't done anything. Well, what's the core underlying foundations that are the problem? We got to work on those and then build our way up to using supplements as needed for somebody. Peptides. Really, 3 good ones: Testosterone, MK677, and Kispeptin. I know Kispeptin was off for a little bit. That one's coming back. Testosterone was off for a little bit. That one's coming back. These 3 work really great. The testosterone is going to work on your growth hormone releasing hormone. It's going to stimulate that, which helps the body overall. And from a 130-day cycle of testosterone, growth hormone stays elevated for up to 4 months. So that's pretty darn good. MK677 also will help with the ghrelin mimetics. So it's going to help with appetite suppressant, but also increases IGF and growth hormone. And then Kispeptin also stimulates the gonadotropin releasing hormone, which increases LH production, which in turn increases testosterone levels. So these 3 are really good ones to get in the system. Within their BPC 157, you could add in also, again, these are all dependent on if they're available or not. I know some have come off, they come back on, it changes through there, but these are 3 really good ones to work with testosterone levels for guys. Sleep is key. Can't emphasize this enough. Sleep is massive. It increases hormones, it increases tissue repair, regeneration, increases memory formation and learning, helps with weight loss. If you get less than 6 hours of sleep a night, it shows you get weight gain. If you get 8 hours roughly, you're going to get lower body fat overall. So sleep is really key. Sleep deprivation. An hour and a half less of sleep, which is going from that 8 to that 6 area, you're going to get a 32% reduction in alertness, memory, and cognition. In men, we see actually almost roughly 50% reduction in testosterone, libido, and increase in erectile dysfunction from that lack of sleep. Also, there's a direct association with lack of sleep and increasing in Alzheimer's disease. So sleep is really key. It's also an inflammation fighter. So decreased sleep, you increase your C-reactive protein, your interleukins, your prostaglandins. So those are all inflammatory markers in the body. They're going to decrease your hormones when those go up. Increased association with asthma, autoimmune disease, irritable bowel, and IBS. And again, less than 6 hours of sleep, we know from above there, we're going to see those issues with hormones. We're also going to see lowered life expectancy. And it actually is equal to that of a person who smokes. Which, if you think about it, don't smoke, sleep. You've just take 2 huge things away from your body that are healthy for it, that'll create better health for yourself. So sleep is really, really key. And that's one thing we work with a lot with clients is their sleep environment. They could be using a grounding mat if they need to, which work really well to help to improve sleep. And then everything around them, getting rid of blue light, turning their phones off an hour before bed, staying away from the blue lights at that point for there. So those are all key things you need to look at doing to help improve sleep quality. Boosting T naturally. I love this one. When I do these live with people is I actually have everybody get up, because usually at this time they're kind of like a little fallen out. It's been about 40 minutes and they're a little bit off there. So the Maori war chant, the Maori warriors in East Zealand and the Pacific Islanders, getting up and just start screaming and getting into it, getting outside and yell, throwing on some rock music and just jamming out. I'm a drummer, as Michael had said earlier. Just getting that rock and movement, you actually increase testosterone levels for at least 20 minutes, if not longer. So just getting up and just going outside, giving a scream, yelling, just rock out, doing the war chants, you're going to increase testosterone immensely. High intensity interval training, shorter workouts, 400% increase in testosterone versus longer, hour-long, 2-hour-long workouts. Those decrease testosterone. We see that with the endurance athletes. Longer they work out, lower testosterone they have. Shorter the workout, the better testosterone levels they have. Light therapy, whether it's using UV from outside or red light therapy directly on the testes. I know the big thing out there for a while was for right now, some of the biohackers were like, sunning your rectum, sunning your butthole there in the sun, or putting red light on it. That actually does show increase in testosterone levels. So if you can't get outside, use red light to get on that area, testes themselves, all that area to help boost testosterone. And then also really one that we like to promote for sure is increase intimacy with your partner. The better intimacy you have, the more often you have, actually increases testosterone levels. Research has shown you actually boost immune function for several hours after having intercourse or masturbation too. Ejaculation itself shows you actually increase hormone levels and increase immune function directly afterwards for quite some time. So if you're starting to feeling a little sick, have sex. You'll feel better through there. Usually our partners don't like that. But it shows increased intimacy increases health overall and boosts testosterone levels. There's some thoughts, some of the biohackers out there right now are saying, if you don't have sex, you actually increase testosterone. Chronic masturbation every single day, porn addiction, those type things do decrease testosterone levels. So if you're having issues, get some help with that. But regular intimacy 3-4 times a week actually shows to increase hormone levels and immune function. So knowing is half the battle. Putting it all together, looking at coaching or communicating, working with a coach, nutrition, the testing is really important. And then we're going to talk a little bit about genetics here. Just cover that really, briefly, but really hit some really key points in genetics there itself. So we're looking at, hormone production itself. So here's a great slide of different markers, different genetics that really will look at the production. So we're looking at testosterone. We're going to look at the sexual binding globulin production, 1, 2, and 3. Those 3 ones in particular for genetics will affect testosterone. The FAM9B, the LH, you can see those one there, the REAP, the SRD, the TARD-BP, the FOXA3. All those ones affect testosterone production. We didn't talk about it earlier, but I'll bring it up, is your APOE status. So the APO 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you're a 3-4 or a 4-4, those are the worst genetics to have for saturated fat issues, where you have to have low saturated fat intake. So we look at that and go, if a person has APO 3-4, I'm one of them, or a 4-4, we have to watch saturated fat intake. It doesn't matter if it's good saturated fat versus bad saturated fat. We have to look at saturated fat intake. And we have to keep it low, 15 to 20 grams or less a day of that saturated fat, because if we get too much, it actually increases estrogen production. It decreases testosterone. It goes to the nervous system and actually increases inflammation, leading to early Alzheimer's and dementia within there, and memory loss. So we have to look at that APO 3 and 4 status to really know if you're a good candidate to have some saturated fat or not have saturated fat. And I see it quite often. The coconut oil craze, everybody's putting that on everything. And high saturated fat, the meat diets, the carnivore diet. Like, you got to be careful within there to know what your statuses are, to know if you're having a risk for it or not. So the APO 3-4 is really important there. So those are the key ones looking there. Testosterone production. If we're looking at testosterone to estrogen conversion, you're going to particularly look at the CYP19A1s, the 1 and the 2 genes. Those 2 are looking at the estrogen conversion there. Further down the chain, looking at estradiol to the 2s, you're looking at the CYP3A4. And those are particularly in the liver, but these are markers you can run to look at that too, because you want that 2-hydroxyestradiol to be elevated there. And then again, on the other side, the estrones, the 4s and the 16s, again, looking at the CYP1B1s and 1A1s and the 3A4s. Those are key to know, looking at your genetics. If you're converting to those, how we can go in and tweak those around there. Looking at luteinizing hormone and the anterior pituitary itself, looking at the FAM9B, that's expressed in the testes. So looking at those alleles. I don't want to go too in depth here, but you can look at these and read them and research on them if you want to. The REAP3, the receptor expression enhancing protein, that's going to increase luteinizing hormone, which again will increase testosterone within there itself. And then the luteinizing hormone, choriogonadotropin receptor 1, again, that one there too. If you have the double T's on there, you're going to increase luteinizing hormone levels, which will increase testosterone levels. So we look at these and go, okay, that's looking at luteinizing hormone. Here's the factors that could be your issue there. We're looking at the sex hormone binding globulin, those three plus the REAP1, again, looking at, causing of the elevations if it's genetic for there, high estrogen levels, thyroid cortisol levels, all those can increase sex hormone binding globulin levels. So you want to look at your lab work and see if those are elevated. It could be from the genetics. Also, low GH, growth hormone, can cause the sex hormone binding globulin to increase. Smoking, alcohol, liver disease, so that fatty liver that happens from too much simple carbohydrate in the system, you're going to cause sex hormone binding globulin to increase through there. And again, looking at those ones there to go there. So interventions, testosterone therapy can help with that. Growth hormone can help with it. Stop any oral estrogens you could be exposed to. Stinging nettle can help. And then the SARMs, the receptor modulators also for the androgens, can help modulate these if we're seeing this too much. But it's going to come down to what you're eating is a major part of what this problem is. And then looking at that 5-alpha reductase enzyme itself, which can increase the DHT, which can cause balding and other issues there. I love this first one, the JMJD1C, the Jumanji domain containing 1C. I love that one because Jumanji, of course, we think of the movies and everything. I don't know who named it, but then that's a brilliant one to think about there. The steroid 5-alpha reductase, CYPs, histone deacylase, the TARD-BP, the Forkhead Box A2. And again, another one. These ones all look at how that DHT can increase from the genetic level itself and how we may be able to modulate those. And then estrogen metabolism, again, the CYPs, we'll look at the COMTs. We're familiar with COMT, the COMT genetics. Those will be on the Dutch test, looking at there to see if you have COMT issues there also. But again, we see this within men and women and how we can go in and look at methylation and other issues and go, okay, where's that piece of the puzzle that comes from? You can have the genetics for this stuff, but if your environment's perfect, you have no problem whatsoever. You can have very little or a single marker for stuff, and then next thing you know, boom, it's having issues for you because of your environment that's causing the issues. And then again, estrogen metabolism, looking at those. Again, in men, I like to emphasize from the Dutch test, the 2:16 ratio, because if that 16 is elevated or that 4 is elevated, you are at a greater risk for prostate cancer. So we want to make sure those are low and the 2s are actually high in the system. And then itself, looking at phase 2 estrogen metabolism itself, detoxification, your COMT, is very, very important. And then also looking at how we can modulate stuff. So you can use DIM, which is going to stimulate the 2-hydroxylation via that C1P1A1 pathway. You're going to increase there. Calcium deglucarate is another great product that can help with phase 2 glucuronidation in particular. And that's going to take some of the toxic estrogens, make them water soluble to allow them to get out of the system. So that's how those two work genetically and metabolically. And then, of course, you want to promote glutathione using NAC, lipoic acid, selenium, B6, or zinc, because glutathione is going to help clean out that system as our master antioxidant. So that's where those supplements come into play and how they work in the body itself. I like the nerdy stuff. It's kind of fun because we get deep dive there. And then, of course, the crazy MTHFR world. And I'm sure you guys have seen this and seen this a ton there. Here's looking at the particular genes and then your genetic makeup for those and where you're going to see potential enzyme activity cause issues there. Like I said, the AA677 and the double T1298, those are two ones that we see. They usually will get 20%, 25% enzyme activity. But again, what's that environment look like? If the environment is off, you're going to see this occur. If the environment's good, you might not see it at all. And I've seen ones with the GG677 and the TT1298. They're 100% enzyme activity supposed to be, but they don't because of the environment itself. So this gives us the genetic, but that epigenetic, that phenotype presentation we want to know. And then methylation, again, there's 70% of the population is normal. As functional medicine people, we tend to see the people who have the issues. So we're like, oh my gosh, everybody has methylation issues. It's only about 30% of the population that potentially has methylation issues. So again, looking at the genetics and looking at the epigenetic presentation in lab work is really key to let us know if you have an issue or not. And again, looking at very specific genetics in men affecting testosterone levels, sperm count and aggression, the ApoE4 status, your phospholipase C-Eta2, your MAOA, monoamine oxidase, looking there, your MAOB also they're looking at. Those two in particular, if those are positive in the genetics with the C and T alleles, you'll see more aggression from testosterone replacement therapy. So if we're concerned about that, because a guy may be a little aggressive, we'll look at those genes and go, you know what, maybe we don't want to give him testosterone there itself. That's it, guys. Oh, I love this stuff. Hopefully you gained a ton of information from there, and that we can have some fun more. And if you got more questions, let us know. Mike, I know you said you're going to have some questions for me, so let's fire away.
Thank you. That was awesome. I took a lot of notes. Ironically enough, this is a topic out of many functional medicine topics that I'm not very educated on. I think that's because it's just not talked about enough. And so many of the patients, consumers, readers, watchers in this space are women. And so it just gets ignored a lot. So I have... we have full presentations on light and circadian rhythm and hormones with Carrie Bennett. You mentioned that a bit. Testing is with Dr. Liz Bartman, who used to be with Dutch, but she gets into nerd level 10 of hormone testing. Endocrine disrupting chemical deep dive with Laura Adler. And then there's a genetics presentation with Jacqueline Downs, although I would guess yours is much more male specific, but if there's ladies watching this and you want to get the ladies info, she'll have a lot on that.
Well, that applies to women too for that genetics, because you know, it's just might be slightly different focus. Which is good. You know, this was for guys and a good kind of coverage of everything, because everything was women. So I tried to hit everything we could in a good enough pattern that you can kind of go, okay, like there's some deep stuff we need to think about. There is. And I like that you mentioned that you can take all the hormone increase or testosterone increasing supplements on the planet, but if you're not doing the other things, you're just going to be spending a lot of money. Peptides is another topic that I'm not super educated on, so I found that interesting. Are those injected peptides, or are those oral? How are those consumed? The ones that you mentioned? Okay. They're injected. Yeah. So those are with the doctors. I like that screaming makes me have testosterone. Right. And I mean, it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, I would guess. I found it fascinating that 60% of men over 60 have prostate cancer, but that you'll die with it and not know about it. It's because it generally, if you get it later, it's not super symptomatic and not fast and aggressive. Is that? Yeah. So it just kind of is. It's just kind of there. It's just there. Is the cancer? The cells are going to change. And again, this is when we look. You know, when they look at autopsy, they look at labs and things, and they look at and say, okay, here is what we're going to see happen. Is they're looking at a population that's generally been sick and passed away. Yeah. They're not looking at, so they're going to say, here's what we see happen. You're probably, and it is like as guys, you and me, we're probably, when we die, we're probably going to have some form of cancer in the body, most likely prostate, because of what we see from the data, but it isn't going to be a factor. It's not going to be what kills us. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because at first the number was like, I can't be right. But then when you framed it that way, it's a lot less scary. Because 60% of men were getting an aggressive cancer, then it's like, holy shit, this is a problem. Yeah. If you get it earlier, then it's much more aggressive there. And that's what to say is as we age, it's naturally for those cells to break down and become cancerous there, but it's not going to be affecting your overall health as you pass away, however you pass away with that in your body, and it's not the main issue. And leaky prostate, leaky testes, that was the first time I've ever heard of that. And whenever there's barriers, it seems to be systemic. When something is compromised, it's not compromised in one place, it's compromised all over, because I've heard of leaky gut, leaky brain connection. Yep. I think I heard of leaky gut, leaky skin. There's like skin related stuff. And then I think I'd never heard of that one. So that was new. Yeah. If you're leaky, you're leaky. Like everywhere's leaky.
And then it's interesting that 50% of infertility is now men or higher, and that was probably 20% 30 years ago,
Exactly.
if I had to guess. And the testosterone levels dropping 60% since the 70s is pretty shocking. So
Yeah.
important stuff that needs more attention and more platforming, I think.
For sure.
Hammering the sleep, having a baby at 43 has been interesting. So
Yes.
I'm starting to sleep now, but last year was rough. And yeah, if I get under 6 hours, I'm like completely useless. Like I can't.
Yeah.
It's like being hungover. Like it feels like it used to feel in my 20s when I drank a bunch of alcohol, but I don't get to drink any alcohol, and then I still feel the same way, and there's no fun part. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
great.
Sleep is so, and that's why, like, when you read or you go through and read literature on sleep deprivation, or they would use that as a form of torture, essentially, is you can go a while without water, you can go a while without food, but you can't go very long without sleep before you lose your mind.
Yeah, I've been there.
And sadly, that's we aren't sleeping.
Yeah, and part of that is that's a multifactorial situation, but all the screens, all the things are open. That was a big difference when I moved to Italy. Was in the US, at least in like urban areas for sure, you're trained that stuff should be available to you 24 hours a day. Like you should be able to go out at 3 a.m. and buy your groceries. So you should be able to do, whatever. Gas station shouldn't close. This shouldn't close. The coffee shop should be open at 4 a.m. because I have to go to the 5 a.m. and there's shifts that are 24 hours. Like that doesn't, it exists a lot less here. Like that kind of thing. Like the grocery store closes at 8 p.m. and it's not even open on Sunday. And a lot of the shops aren't open on Sunday. And coffee shops open at 7 a.m. So like things are just not 24 hours on demand all the time, doing the things, running to the place, it's wild. And I think that contributes to it a lot as well.
For sure. For sure.
And then you have people preaching, you shouldn't be sleeping, you should always be hustling.
Right.
Especially in the men's world. Like the men's, like if you read like, I don't know what men's magazines are now, but when I was 25, it was Maxim. And you would read this magazine and there'd be some guy in there telling you like, if you want to make your life better, you're going to start doing XYZ things at 4:30 in the morning, and then you're going to do them, and then you're going to go to work, and then you're going to go to your second job, and then you're going to have a side hustle, and then you're going to lift weights at like midnight, and then you're going to, and then this is the routine of like the winner or the, hustle harder than everybody else culture. And that's like a race to see who can tank themselves as fast as possible.
Who's going to race to who's going to die first?
Yeah. Go get it, buddy. You win.
You got home first. Good job. Yeah, and we talked about that, in the podcast there before of biohacking, and which is great. How do we simply and effectively do specific things to help our health overall? But if you look at a lot of the biohackers, the stuff they promote and everything they do, it's like, how many hours in a day are you doing this stuff, and do you have time?
Yeah. And what if you just were doing healthy stuff that didn't make you have to do so much biohacking? Like people reach out like, how do I hack only getting 5 hours of sleep? I'm like, you go to bed. Like someone will send me an article like creatine. If you take a certain amount of grams of creatine, it like offsets the effects of a sleep deprivation. And I was like, just sleep and don't take the creatine. Like it,
right.
And I get it. It's impossible sometimes, but I've seen a lot of people that could make different decisions wanting to do the hacking of the problem created by the decision that's not being made. So I've become less gentle in my responses to those things over the years.
Right. Yeah. We know how to say no.
All right. So this was fantastic. Thank you. We'll have links to your work and your website and your stuff. And I think I need to come in and get my tires kicked around by you guys over there. 44 with a baby and stress and no sleep, and I think I need to run some stuff. So I have symptoms of being a tired man. So we'll be in touch. But thanks, Dr. Jerry. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.